What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and it's Tuesday, which means it's time to set our waiver wire claims for week 11 of the fantasy football season. And this, to me, is actually a pretty good week to need, especially a wide receiver or a flex piece. This is one of the deeper wide receiver waiver wires that I can remember, and we are going to go 10 to 20 players deep, all under 50% owned in ESPN leagues to make sure that we cover you guys that are in your 8 to 10 teamers, and then all the way to the sicko leagues of your 16 teamers where you are just picking guys up off of the street and throwing them in your lineup. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And the way that we do this video is we're going to talk about our priority ads first. These are players that I would bid 5 to 10% or more of my budget on, or use one of those high waiver wire priorities on. And first up, we have Alec Pierce. Now, I will say, I'm going to post this video and then immediately start writing my waiver wire article over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description or the comment section down below. I will put out my waiver wire article where I talk through all the players mentioned here, even more players. I write a little blurb for all of them, and then also tell you exactly how much fab I would be bidding on every single player. With Alec Pierce, he has just been an absolute revelation, where he is now the wide receiver 37 on the year. That's in total points despite missing a few games there. And then we can also see from this Hayden Winks tweet that he is just on an absolute tear over his last 4 games. 29% target share, then 16%, 24%, 26.9%. Absolute monster. He leads the Colts in targets over this 4-game sample. 14.9 points per game, 91.5 yards per game. He is a real player who is absolutely balling out. Now, I will say the Colts are on bye here. They're going to be on bye, and then they play Kansas City and Houston, and it's a tough schedule, to be honest, but he's been so good that it's going to be tough to not rank him as a top 36 wide receiver moving forward. And if he's still available on your waiver wire, he has to be picked up. Somebody else will mention as a priority ad, again, another receiver. And this is really rare because usually it's running backs that are found off of the waiver wire, not receiver. But this is one of those rare years where it does feel really strong at wide receiver off of the waiver wire, where we've had in weeks past, Kayshon Boutte was balling for a little bit. Romeo Doubs has been found off of waiver. I'm sure that there's more guys I'm missing on top of my head as well, but there's just been a lot more opportunities to find points off of waiver this year at wide receiver. Now, why that is, I do not know. I'm trying to think, is there any other that I can think on top of my head? Was Keenan Allen ever a waiver wire guy at one point? Wan'Dale Robinson's another one. There's just been a lot of, Troy Franklin's another one. There's just been a lot of good players off of the waiver wire this year. And again, it's just not really that common at wide receiver because usually, let's say, it's actually a good example with Bijan Robinson in the Falcons, right? Bijan goes down, Algier, number 1 waiver wire pickup, top 12 running back moving forward. If Drake London was to go down, that doesn't mean Darnell Mooney is going to be amazing. Darnell Mooney has had a game or two this year without Drake London, and he was almost unstartable. So there's just a lot more variables that play at wide receiver. It's not always super obvious, but this year the wide receivers available on waivers have actually been pretty dang good. Tez Johnson being one of them, where this past week he was somebody that was pretty much free, available everywhere, still available in a lot of places. He was on bye week last week. He puts up 20.2 PPR points, 4 catches, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns. And when we talk about late season upside, a lot of that comes from rookies in fantasy football, and Tez Johnson in the rookie receiver report is looking pretty strong. Now, of course, his per out numbers of 16% targets per out run and 1.47 yards per out run aren't the greatest numbers in the world, but for a day 3 wide receiver that just recently recently has been able to be a part of this offense, to be a focal point in this passing offense, has been really good. We're over his last 5 games, he's had 9.9 points, 11.5, 15.8, 9.3, 20.2. You take that all day from a day 3 rookie that you grabbed off of the waivers, and if he's still out there, he needs to be picked up for this stretch run. We'll also talk about Parker Washington. He's another one of these guys where he's just been really good off of waivers over the last 3 weeks. He's the wide receiver 18. He has a minimum of 20% target share in each of those 3 games. And we can see here, even with Jacoby Myers in the mix, Jacoby Myers is going to take a lot of those Tim Patrick routes, but I still think that Parker Washington is going to be a focal point in this offense. They just target him a ton. He had 11.9 PPR points, but if you had a league where the punt return touchdown helped you, then he also scored even more points than that. He's somebody that you can just throw in the flex right away here. And then we can also talk about Christian Watson. He played in the game last night, and the box score wasn't great, but it's the underlying metrics with Christian Watson that look good. The Eagles' defense is really good. It was a really weird primetime game where nobody seemed to really want to score, but we do have this info. This is from fantasylife.com. Looking at their utilization report, you can see Christian Watson's routes. This is really what's important. 65% of the routes, then 75%, then 83%. So he is now working his way up to being a full-time wide receiver for the Packers. And to me, that is a really big deal for this big play, boom-bust style wide receiver. His yards per out run numbers have been good as well. He had a really weird, I don't even know if you'd call it a drop, but the ball like hit him on the helmet despite him like playing defense there. I don't know. Weird things. He's still coming back from the ACL, but he absolutely is somebody who's now going to be neck and neck with Romeo Doubs for routes run in a given week for the Packers offense, and that is really, really strong. I do think the Packers will bounce back here eventually. LaFleur always scores a lot of points in a given season. Then we have Luther Burden, who I love. Still priority ad here. He's rostered in only 5% of ESPN leagues. He's definitely more of an upside swing. I wouldn't pick up Luther Burden and throw him in your lineup this week, but when we do talk about the rookie receiver report and what Luther Burden has been, he's all the way across the bottom. He now set a season-high 49% route share, and his per-out numbers across the board are amazing. These are the bets we want to make on these late-season breakouts where I think Ladd McConkey last year, to a lesser extent Jalen McMillan last year. Luther Burden, 22% targets per out run, 2.71 yards per out run, 77.5 PFF grade, all really strong numbers. In this recent game, 3 catches, 51 yards, 2 first downs, 2.55 yards per out run. DJ Moore is banged up. That's something to keep an eye on. And then also, these Olamide Zaccheaus routes, with all of these drops, it's insane. I do think that Luther Burden can turn the corner here soon. And if he ever gets to 80% plus of the routes, he is somebody that is on the borderline of like a must start in your flex spot moving forward. And then our only running back here for priority ads is just one that I continue to beg everybody to, like, I don't know how he's rostered in only 27.8% of ESPN leagues, but this has to come up. He is a must-roster handcuff that in a given week can just fall in the end zone like he did this week. I believe he scored 2 touchdowns versus the Colts, and he sometimes will just score enough touchdowns to be usable. The Falcons love using him in the red zone. He sometimes will get like 10-plus touches and be pretty good. And then he gets Carolina next week, but then New Orleans, the Jets. So he gets some easier matchups coming up where if you're in desperation mode, you can throw him in there. But he's also just the most important handcuff in all of fantasy football in my eyes, behind Bijan Robinson. But then we go to our normal ads. These aren't guys that I'm really going to bid 10% plus of my fab budget on, but guys that I have in this order of priority. We have Emari DeMercado. I don't know why I'm struggling today, fellas, but Emari DeMercado, who we said was a sneaky start, and then he went out there and put up 13.4 PPR points. We'll take that for like somebody in the RB30s. Trey Benson's supposed to return here soon. Bam Knight gets banged up. This backfield's a mess, but if you're in a spot where you have to pick somebody up to then throw in your lineup, the Cardinals' backfield is a decent spot to throw darts at. It's not super sexy, but one of these guys is going to score 12-plus PPR points in a given week. If that's the game you're playing at RB2, the Cardinals' running backs are viable. If you're more so just looking for somebody to stash on your bench, Brian Robinson is arguably up there with Tyler Algier as the most important handcuff in fantasy football. He had 9 to 10 touches last week. He scores a touchdown. If McCaffrey ever misses a game, Brian Robinson is a top 15 running back in that week at worst. We can also talk about Tyjae Spears. He's a tough one. He continues to split work almost down the middle with Tony Pollard. He's a really rough start, but if you're just like desperate for running back production at your RB2 spot, he's a decent bet to give you like 7 PPR points in a given week, but it's really tough. And then a lot of these other guys are just your handcuffs of Blake Corum. Kyron gets banged up. Corum will be a league winner. Sean Tucker, who knows if Bucky Irving is going to return at any point this season? His timetable is genuinely who knows? I was going to say undecided, undetermined. Like truly, we have no clue when he's coming back. Rachaad White continues to be inefficient. And in this game, Sean Tucker outproduces Rachaad White on the ground. He has 11 opportunities to Rachaad White's 15. This gap continues to close. And if Sean Tucker ever takes over Rachaad White's role as the RB1, he's going to be a great start in fantasy football. And then he also has the opposite side of this where if, God forbid, Rachaad White then gets banged up and it goes to Sean Tucker, he would be a borderline league winner. And then the last running back we'll talk about, Devin Singletary. He's only here just to have him here. It's still a split with Tyrone Tracy, but Singletary has a way of sticking around and getting goal line carries. So if you're really down bad at running back, Singletary's a fine handcuff with 5+ PPR points in your RB2 spot if you find yourself down bad. Then we have some wide receivers, which I will say we don't have many to talk about because a lot of them I had as priority ads, but Darius Slayton's not bad at all. Darius Slayton gave you nothing crazy this past week, but over his last 2 weeks, 10 plus PPR points, right? 5 for 62 versus San Fran, and then this previous week, 4 for 89 versus Chicago. Nothing crazy, but if you need 10 plus PPR points in your flex spot, Darius Slayton is a fine pickup. Then we can talk about the Patriots wide receivers. This one's tough. I would love to get excited about Kyle Williams. Really fun rookie, really fun prospect. Yes, he scored a 72-yard touchdown in this game, but he only had 1 catch. If we look at his rookie receiver report here, you can see him between Dante Thorne and Colston Loveland. The per route metrics are brutal. Under 10% targets per out run, under 1.5 yards per out run, under 2.5% first downs per out run, PFF grade under 60. Like, I don't know. We'll see if things get better, but his issue the entire year has been that he's not a target earner, and he didn't prove that in the first game without Kayshon Boutte. But then you have Matt Collins, who I think is actually a better ad if you need somebody to play right now. Matt Collins, in any game that Boutte doesn't play, Matt Collins just inherits that X wide receiver role, and he ends up running 30 of 36 routes in this most recent game, which is huge because the Patriots have been rotating these wide receivers the entire time. Some people thought Kyle Williams would fill in. Some people thought Pop Douglas would fill in. Instead, Matt Collins is the one-for-one replacement. So any game that Boutte doesn't play, Matt Collins is a viable flex piece. And then the final one we can talk about is Jaden Higgins. He has a good game, right? 7 targets, 5 catches, 42 yards, a touchdown. But this Texans staff continues to underplay these wide receivers. Jaden Higgins on this graphic at the bottom there, only 53% of the routes now that Christian Kirk has been back and Nico Collins has been back the last 2 weeks. He's just not on the field enough. But if there's ever a change of heart, if Christian Kirk goes down again, Jaden Higgins could be a league winner down the stretch. Then we will get into our tight ends and our quarterbacks here. At tight end, we have a bunch of guys in a given week that you can start if you want. Dalton Schultz, if he's out there, he has 10 plus PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games. Theo Johnson, 10 plus in 5 of his last 7 games. And I keep saying that because that's really, if you can just get 10 plus PPR points from your tight end, that's a W. Cade Otton, 10 plus PPR points in 4 of his last 5. Juwan Johnson, he has now had 4 straight games of 10 plus PPR points, but he's on bye this week, so something to note there. And then you have Colston Loveland. I have Colston Loveland at the bottom of this list because he's fun, he's great, he's a fun rookie, but his routes with Cole Kmet back in the mix went from 75% of the routes in week 9 down to 56%. So he goes from somebody that you can start as a top 12 option to now really just a stash on the bottom of your bench for, the next time that we see his routes jump, even with Cole Kmet in the lineup. But that's really, in terms of tight ends, like those are a lot of really good options. It just comes down to who's available in your league. And then we have the quarterbacks here. You have Marcus Mariota, put up a fine game against the Detroit Lions. He gets Miami this week, which should be an easy matchup. Then you have Joe Flacco. He gets Pittsburgh this week. Pittsburgh has been one of the worst defenses in the NFL this year. Joe Burrow, I included. He technically is over the 50% mark, but if you find Joe Burrow on waivers in your league and you have quarterback issues, right? Maybe you lost Jaden Daniels. Maybe I'm trying to think of the other quarterbacks that kind of have gotten hurt or, if you've just been down bad at quarterback, Joe Burrow is certainly somebody to look at. And then Jacoby Brissett. He's been solid. He doesn't get an easy matchup versus the 49ers this week, but in his 4 starts here, he's given you 21, 19, 24, 19. So nothing less than 19 PPR points for Jacoby Brissett so far. So those are my favorite quarterback streamers this week. Now that is going to do it for us today. As always, if you want access to my waiver wire article, that will be over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, just leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm